Tiga pelajar pusat
Seorang wanita ditikam
berdasarkan rakaman kamera
litar
kejadian
namun oleh jirannya sebelah kawasan damai
termasuk
What's your emergency?
Hi, I'd like to order a pizza, please.
But ma'am, you reached 999.
I know. Could you say how long?
Ma'am, is everything okay?
No, it's 43 Jalan Selasih.
Is there someone in the room with you that you can talk about?
Yes, I would like to order a pepperoni pizza.
I've got an officer a mile away. Can you stay on the line?
No thanks. I'll see you soon. I will turn on my flashlight.
Hi, Assalamualaikum everyone and good morning. Welcome to PD Talk Series 3.0.
Yay! Welcome everyone.
First of all, we would like to thanks to all the participants for joining us today. Walaupun sekarang ni masa yang sangat sesuai untuk kita melelapkan mata kan sebab dah petang. Tapi terima kasih kerana masih lagi sudi dan bersemangat untuk luangkan masa untuk event kita petang ni.
We welcome our very special and adorable guest, Dr. Rohana Ariffin.
Hi, Doctor.
Hi there. I am sure you guys are curious about our panel speaker for today. So let us introduce a bit about our panel speaker's background. Her name is Dr. Rohana Ariffin and she is the former Associate Professor at University Science Malaysia. She had done research related to domestic violence and women's work trade union.
Other than that, briefly in the 80s, she was appointed as the president of Women's Crisis Center in Penang. Also, she was one of the speakers at the event of International Women's Day at University Malaya a few years ago. She is an active motivational speaker in seminars and online platform till now. Hebat speaker kita.
Hebat betul. Definitely, Dr. Rohana is such an amazing person and very inspirational. So, are you guys ready to dive deeper into our topic today?
Yes.
So I know you guys are so excited. But before we start, we want to invite Dr. Rohana to say a few words. Dipersilakan.
Thank you for inviting me today because I think this topic amongst all the other problems that we face during the pandemic caused by the virus is also very relevant because domestic violence has been an ongoing issue but seems to be increasing during the pandemic. But it's not only in Malaysia but many other countries as well. So you guys have chosen a relevant topic, especially for people staying at home at the moment with all the various MCOs.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rohana. We actually are looking forward for today's session. Semua orang nak tahu kan, sebab isu sekarang makin panas. Kita berada di Malaysia, banyak sangat kes domestic violence, betul tak?
Yes, increasing, yeah.
Okay, so what is actually domestic violence? Korang semua tahu tak ni?
Apa tu domestic violence ni?
I'm sure that all of us are quite familiar with the term kan. Dalam bahasa Melayu kita panggil keganasan rumah tangga. So actually domestic violence is actually an act or behaviour yang terjadi between partner in the marriage or in a relationship. Basically it is about power and control. Ini boleh terjadi apabila one partner nak control the other but they actually dalam keadaan yang menanamkan ketakutan dalam partner yang lain. Dia macam bukan membelai dan menyayangi tapi dia orang memukul. Ataupun ada banyak lagi kan kata level of domestic violence ni. But Alia, domestic violence ni dia bukannya hanya sekadar physical abuse kan?
Yes, that is so true, Fatihah. Sangat setuju. Actually, there are many different types of abuse that could be done by the abuser, whether it could be in a form of mental abuse, physical abuse, or verbal abuse. Physical abuse can be easy to spot on, but other forms of domestic abuse like mental and verbal can be slightly harder to identify. However, Fatihah, mental abuse is as serious as physical abuse. During the pandemic especially, we have seen a lot of recent cases of domestic violence from social media. And one of the cases that I saw in Johor, this involved a 12-week pregnant woman who fell into a coma after being beaten by her husband.
Oh my god, that is very horrible. Okay, since we are stuck at home during the MCO, the abuser has the higher chance to unleash his anger and beat their own partner. But what is more saddening is the fact that when the abuser also started to beat his children. Macam there are also another recent cases in Penang. During the first day of Hari Raya, kita nak raya, nak happy-happy kan. Tiba-tiba the father beat up his child and his wife with a chair just because the child forgot to lock the door. Sampai macam tu sekali. Nampak tak?
Sangat teruk ya.
Oh my god, so brutal,
Macam tu
right?
sekali.
I think I'm afraid to get married now kot. Bapak tu lah door je pun macam tu. Okay. So to dive deeper into this topic, I will pass the platform to our three beautiful moderator, Haja, Kamila and Fazina. The floor is yours.
Alright, thank you so much Iha and Alia. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, our topic today is so hot, right? Can you feel the heat?
Yes, it's a serious issue.
Yeah, that's right.
Haja and Lina, when we talk about domestic violence, right, we know this issue is not a new issue anymore. It's happening all over the world. Maybe without us realizing it, it's actually happening in our sector. So Haja, have you ever encountered this issue before?
Personally, myself, I have never experienced this issue before, and I can imagine myself in their shoes. We always heard that about domestic violence boleh mencederakan mangsa secara fizikal, tapi jarang kita tahu yang dia sebenarnya juga boleh memberi kesan yang mendalam kepada mental dan emosi mangsa. Jadi, I can wait to know more from Dr. Rohana's expertise and opinion on this topic.
Yeah, me too, Haja. You are right. So, actually, I have heard and read about the domestic violence cases, and in Malaysia, there's a lot of cases actually. So, due to this, I'm very sad that why this domestic violence is still happening in our society, right? So we know that all the participants today can't wait to know more about domestic violence. So without further ado, let's start our first slot, which is domestic violence today. So, yeah.
Excited.
Thank you very
Alright,
much.
Doctor.
Okay, before we go into domestic violence and the Domestic Violence Act, we have to know a little bit of the history of domestic violence. Because before 1993, there was no law, there was no undang-undang. So you can beat up your wife, you can beat up your children, all in the domestic sphere. So when we go to the police station, masa itu, dia orang tu tak tahu, pukul isteri apa salahnya, anak is okay what, nothing wrong, pukul anak-anak, kan macam ada juga sekarang ni. So they think it's okay to beat the wife or the children. This is not normal beating, yeah. This sometimes can cause a lot of injury as well. So what happened, before 1993, there was no Domestic Violence Act. But what happened is, in 1888, when I was also part of the Women Crisis Center, and there was also WAO, Women AIDS Organization in Kuala Lumpur, there's also AWAM, there were about 5 women organizations, and also one in Sabah and Sarawak eventually. We sort of come together and said that this act must be enacted, just like the Sexual Harassment Act now, which has been on hold for so long. So for 10 years, we struggle. We meet together, say every few months. It's called JAC, under Joint Action Committee. So we meet in Kuala Lumpur, have a stage show, write a memorandum, get lawyers to, to help us draft the Act because we got quite a few women lawyers. But in that 10 years, we faced a lot of objection. Conservative group objected. Unfortunately, I would say, including the religious group as well, the department. They say, macam mana ni? How can you have an act di mana kita mencabuli, we go into the house of an individual, into the family. Kita masuk keluarga, kita menyekat suami itu menjalankan tugas-tugasnya sebagai seorang suami. So and struggle and went on and get all kind of kecaman and all that. Finally, it went into Parliament and became the Domestic Violence Act. So it was not an easy act. But during the Domestic Violence Act, the police were not aware of all this. The police think is all, this conservative thinking. Ini kena pukul sikit-sikit pun nak ngadu. Sikit-sikit bila suami balik, senyum-senyum lah. Smile-smile is it. If you smile, it won't beat you. This is the kind of jokes they make about it, Yeah. What happened is, at that point in time, Tan Sri Hanif was the chief of police. So I think he's quite broad-minded. He learned law and all that. So he invited the Canadian police, the Royal Canadian Police, to come to Kuala Lumpur to have a forum with us. So the forum was attended by many of the women NGOs, plus some of the police personnel. So when we were taught what happened in Canada, how they go about it, what is the domestic violence and so on. So after the seminar, with the introduction of domestic violence, the training went on. Some of the police officers were trained by the police officers. Some invited the WCC here to give talk to them. So there was quite a lot of cooperation between the police and the women NGOs at that time, and they become quite sensitized to the issue of domestic violence. So if a woman come to the front desk officer have to know that he has to write the report and give it to the investigation officer. This is a report that you cannot just simply wave it off, So that's how the Domestic Violence Act come into force and into being. And this is how many of the cases have been recorded. Last time there was no case recorded. Now the police take all the cases that is recorded. The NGO take all the cases that is recorded and collate it. But at that time, I must tell you, the women ministry have no role. Okay,
I see.
Later on they took on the role. Okay, the women ministry comes in later after everything is already completed everything, and then they write in the report that they have taken it on. So much of the credit actually should go to the women NGOs, yeah.
Awesome.
Doktor, saya tertarik tahu dengan histori yang doktor ceritakan tadi. So, saya rasa situasi yang saya dah baca sebelum kes yang saya dah baca yang relate dengan isu itu, yang mana pada masa lalu, mungkin dalam 50 tahun yang lalu, keganasan rumah tangga ni berlaku disebabkan abuser ni menganggap diri dia satu-satunya yang sole provider and merasakan ada hak untuk melakukan keganasan tersebut because diorang sahaja yang bekerja dahulu. Sebab kan hari ini ramai wanita yang berkejaya, yang independent, tetapi walaupun ramai wanita berkejaya apa semua ni, masih banyak domestic violence ini masih meningkatlah keganasan rumah tangga ini. Kenapa benda ini berlaku, Doktor?
Ya, okey. Situasi luar sudah banyak berubah ya, sebab sekarang ini kita dapati yang lebih daripada separuh universiti masuk UiTM, masuk private universities and all that. You got a lot of women students ya. And a lot of the women students are executive and so on. But kita must remember ya, there are other things which are also working in the direction of preserving the rights of the prominent position of men. Dalam terminologi sociology, we'll say it's patriarchy lah, patriarchy, the rule by men. Yeah, and then kita dapati influence patriarchy ini bukan saja datangnya dari segi sekolah, dari segi ajaran-ajaran yang kita terima dari kecil dalam keluarga, juga jabatan-jabatan tertentu ya yang mendidik anak-anak ya. Jadi itu sebab kita dapat di luar negara, the role of the boys and girls ya have been more equal, we say ya. So when they go into the from the public sphere, from the school into the home, they know understand that you have a more balanced gender role. Tetapi di Malaysia ini kita berterusan dengan adat budaya yang menyatakan yang man is still the dominant in the family. Dia mesti ada satu head of the family, okay? Satu head of the family dengan tanggungjawab tertentu. Tapi now you find that the man and the women both are earning, okay? Tetapi the role of the man and the role of the women has not changed much in the domestic sphere. Although in the public sphere, the woman role have changed, jadi guru lah, jadi besok you all jadi working in tourism lah, jadi macam-macam lagi kan, all kinds of things. But in the home, you are still expected to do the main household responsibility, yeah. Jaga anak, okeykan buy the lauk nak asal, jaga anak dan semua. Jadi kita dapati oleh sebab cultural kita ni, terutamanya di Malaysia ya, kita dapati work culture itu banyak dah berubah. Tetapi home culture ni sangat slow berubah. Disebabkan oleh konservatif, ajaran-ajaran konservatif yang kita tak boleh challenge lah. Kalau kita challenge, ya orang kata kita ni terlampau kebaratan, too western ya. But what we mean by challenging is that we want a more equal role for both men and women. And as you said just now, walaupun banyak wanita yang telah keluar bekerja, tetapi mereka tolerate the situation disebabkan ada di antara mereka yang mengatakan, alah sikit apalah, they beat you and then they feel sorry and all that. Actually they don't feel sorry. If you allow it to go on, it will go on ya. Jadi as one of the ladies now said, kalau nak kahwin saya fikir betul ya. Agree with you, fikir panjang-panjang.
Fikir panjang-panjang doktor.
Banyak-banyak dapat advice from doktor, from Azwin, dari Rachel. Get the advice please.
Kena dapat blessing ya.
Betul tu betul.
You have to educate the man you can marry, you have to call him for
doktor. Doktor kan sekarang ni kalau nak kahwin kena pergi HIV test kan. Lepas ni kena pergi mental test tau. Kena pergi mental assessment ya.
Mental assessment.
Tengok dia punya level of mental illness dia ada tak macam mana kan.
I think it's more of the anger level lah. You have to find a man who doesn't get angry very fast, who resort to violence, you know. So you have to find out his background. Maybe his father used to beat the mother last time and dia dah minum banyak arak. I know of a situation. He drinks a lot, he comes back and he beat his wife and then beat his children, you know. And also other cases where you are stressed outside, you come back and let go to your wife. So I think a lot of counselling for the man is very important.
Yeah.
How to deal with your anger, how to deal with your violence.
Okay, doktor, betul. Saya setuju dengan apa pendapat doktor. Because sometimes when the husband think that they commit domestic violence is to correct their partner, and I can say that this is the power of the husband that they claim. And macam doktor cakap tadi, ia adalah rule by the man. And so from my reading, it is estimated that 1 in 3 women have been subjected to either physical or sexual violence in their lifetime. In fact, most women who experience domestic violence adalah berumur dari 15 hingga 24 tahun. I mean, this is quite an early age for them to experience this kind of behavior, extreme behavior, like when this young couple try to experience love pada usia muda, but it is actually unhealthy relationship without they realize that. So my question is, when a woman experience domestic violence as early as this couple, what are the likely chances they will not end up marrying their abuser?
But I think the figure that you quote just now could be interpreted in several ways. Yeah, from 15 to 20, there is domestic violence more as a child in the home. I think because women in Malaysia marry after 22. But now I think after listening to this talk, you all might marry after 30. Well,
Saya pun rasa macam tu.
that is more to the children in the family from 15 to 18. Because now if we look at the domestic violence over the years, the man, we call it the perpetrator, you call it the abuser, right? The perpetrator highest is in the 30 plus age group, say 32 to 45 like that lah, yeah? And then the women who are married to them are usually 2 or 3 years younger, or usually lah, ya, ada yang older tapi usually younger. So that means the woman who experience domestic violence is between the age of 30 to 45 also. Because you see in marriage, after 10 years of marriage, that's where all the problem starts. I mean, in between already started. But in the 10 years, this is the adjustment period, and with children, and with promotion, and work in the domestic sphere, you find that this is the time when all these things happen, between 30 to 45. So I always make a joke. They say, why is it after 60 all the men become quite good? I said, no, because dia tak ada strength lah. Dia dah very weak, he's old already, he cannot beat already. So it's always between that 30 to 45. So even for women, that is the highest age range. Not so much from the 15 to the 18. That is considered as domestic violence for the children. Macam sekarang banyak commit suicide in that age group, I suspect it's part of domestic violence as well. So the last part of your question I forgot already. What do they do about it, is it?
Yes, Doktor. Alright, Doktor, apa yang Doktor katakan tadi, kebanyakannya domestic violence ni berlaku disebabkan oleh perkahwinan, macam antaranya lebih-lebih lagi usia antara 30 hingga 45 tahun. Jadi Doktor, saya ada jumpa satu kenyataan ni where there's belief that jika macam contohnya seorang perempuan masa kecil dia, ayah dia selalu abuse mak dia. So dia nampaklah kejadian keganasan rumah tangga. Jadi apabila dia besar nanti, Doktor, ada kemungkinan bahawa dia akan berkahwin juga dengan lelaki yang sama perangai dengan ayah dia. Is it true, Doktor? Or if this true, is this?
I can't say for sure because a lot of girls look up to the father figure. So the father, which is violent towards the mother, sometimes they think it's an acceptable behavior, thinking that the mother is irritating or what. But there are also many cases in which the woman will reject such men. But I think the main problem here is how you're going to find that the man is not as violent as your father. Before marriage, I'm sure he has a very different set of behavior. It's only after marriage that things might change a little. But it's not true that they follow the father that used to be their mother. I think in some cases, yes. But in some cases, no. Because there are also theory that the boys who have a violent father tends to follow the behavior of the father. This is not true also. There are some boys who suffer a lot under the father and will not practice this among their children. But there are also fathers who will do the same repetition as it goes into the subconsciousness to think that this is the correct way to teach our children. So I can't say for sure.
Can I just add a little bit here, Doctor? Because I came across one book lah. It suggests that like you mentioned earlier, girls usually tend to look up to their fathers. Yeah. So this particular self-help book suggests that we tend to create, the kind of attraction ataupun vibe that we similar to our father punya character. But dia is broken down into several factors juga. One of the factors is also, of course, the need for us to change the guy because we fail to change our father. So we attract the similar pattern men, but we feel like we can change them. So that was what it was written lah in that book. I think that's what they were trying to reach at lah, the students.
But I think one thing we have to be sure is you can never change a person, yeah,
Right.
until the person wants to change themselves.
Betul.
So that's why I thought counseling and yeah, there was a question that was asked later. I will explain.
Okay.
Yeah. This is about why there was a question you asked later on in your question, why men never come for counseling or come for talks on domestic violence. There was a question, I think. Yeah.
Susah nak ajak dia pergi counseling.
I tell you why. Because in my experience as a volunteer in the Women Crisis Center for over 20 years, because there were a few Malays at that point in 1983 and all that. I was one of the few Malays. I used to go and give talks in Malay, okay, to the estate. I go and give talks to the estate. Yeah. I go and give talks to the low-cost area. Yeah. In the estate, the big major problem was 70% of them got beaten because of alcohol. Okay, in the low-cost apartment near UiTM and all that, it's because of the size of the building, the size of the house, as well as the uncertainty of job for the men. So I go and give a talk there with the Women Crisis Center. I'll be bringing the poster. I go to the estate quite fast. There's a petani there. All the listeners were women. 80-90% were women. So we said to the organizer there, mana lelaki? Where are the men who are involved in this abusing the women? They said they want to datang, they won't come. It's not their problem, This beating is the problem of the woman, not the man. So you see, for them, the violence that they perpetrated is not their problem. It is the problem that the victim provoked them.
Right.
So I went to the talks in all the other places as well. Only 10% of the more men will come lah, The rest are all women with their children. So you see, the problem is seen as a woman's problem. It is not seen as a family or the man's anger problem. So we have this, I don't know about now, but at time it was like that.
Betul. Semua salah masa. Bukan salah masa dia salah kan. So moving on to that question. Kita tahu pandemik ni kita kena duduk kat rumah. So kebiasaan masa akan terperangkap dengan abuser dalam masa waktu yang panjang. Jadi this condition has membenarkan abuser tu untuk melakukan domestic violence terhadap mangsa. Mungkin disebabkan oleh stress, financial problem, and also or doctor kan. So ada satu case ni saya ada baca baru-baru ni je yang mana suami dia baling pinggan tu dekat arah isteri dia hanya disebabkan oleh isteri dia masak makanan yang tak sedap dan kita rasa suami dia sendiri kan. So doktor, do you agree that the isolation with the abuser is one of the main reasons that lead to the domestic violence?
Isolation, yeah. I suppose now with the many lockdown, there is also a contributing factor. But I must explain the background of a little bit our development in society. Kita punya development dalam masyarakat kita sekarang ni adalah katakan development ala kapitalis lah. Jadi ala kapitalis ni selalunya orang-orang kaya ni dia mempunyai banglo 3-4 rata-rata di luar negeri, di Perancis di rata-rata. Okay? Tetapi bagi kebanyakan orang bawah 40-50%, the government said, okay, we build low cost housing. Okay, but have you ever been to the low cost housing that was built in the 60s, 70s, 80s and all that? You tahu dekat Jalan Peliling, dekat Rifle Range in Penang, you know the low cost housing besarnya antara 750 feet to 950 feet. You just bayangkan you punya bilik ataupun Dr. Azwin punya bilik, how big it is. That is the room, the house to house a family, and it's high up like that. It's like a bird living in the sky. Okay, and then the place is so small, so congested, dan selalunya orang-orang yang in the lower group ni mempunyai banyak anak, about 4 or 5. So you just imagine in a 750 square feet, you got 4 or 5 children running around, okay? Dan kalau you ada orang tua, you kau nak tahu dekat old folks home, kan kita punya budaya tak ada lah kan? Mana nak tinggal? Saya kata dekat bus home, maybe you can put your old folks because there's no place. So I think the cost of development has come to the front now, where the building, the house is very small. And then if you go to the low cost areas, which I hope you all will because you all will become middle class, I know, eventually. You see there is not enough public parks, nice places where the children can go down and play, Go and play. Kalau they fed up at home kan. So what happens now is that all these low cost flats are built near supermarkets where there is air condition and all that, okay? So kalau dia tak ada tempat nak pergi, so they go to the supermarket and hang around there. That's why the term lepak is coming to being at that point. Lepak tu budak-budak ni, budak-budak jahat ni pergi kat lepak. I tell you, if you live in a 750 square feet home, when the sun is hot, how do you think you feel? You tell me. Kalau you tak marah, nak marah kan? Siapa nak marah?
Macam sebab panas kot.
Panas. So housing and park facilities are not enough for the low cost houses. But it doesn't aggravate at that point because you can go to the supermarket lah, you can go and lepak here and there kan. But now with the closure, MCO kan, you can't go anywhere. You're stuck in your flat. You're stuck in a small little hot flat, humid flat with all the noises and the neighbors cooking you can smell. Okay, and the lift broken down. One day when you're working in a hotel, you go and visit all these low cost flats and see how they live. They live just have a place, a roof over their head. So now with this closure and isolation in a way, you find that of course the anger level, and then loss of income, and then anak-anak nak pergi sekolah tu bukan macam you must follow lah kan. Kalau hari ni 8 kelas, actually you can cut it to 4 classes. Tomorrow standard 2, 2 subject udahlah. You're not going to go anywhere with this education. You're not going to run anywhere. So the education department also must try and fit lah into our situation now. Because kita punya COVID situation is all over the world. We are not the unique one, Jadi domestic violence ni happen everywhere in the world. Except the Middle East, there's no figure from the Middle East, okay? So we don't know what happens there. They have enough war, they have enough and all that lah. So I think you say isolation is quite true because although you live in an apartment like that, you might not be able to get along with your neighbors. Your neighbors kata anak you bising gaduh. Lepas tu anu sikit, masak sikit, kuat bau, And then you have 4, 5 kids. To me, the main problem was the type of development that we have in the initial stages and even now. For me, if you want to have a good family home, you must have at least 1,000 square feet, with maybe 2 rooms, 2 bathrooms. So people feel lesser. You live a decent life, not an indecent pigeonhole life like now. So with all these kind of problems created by the government actually, and by the developers, the people suffers, To me, this is the suffering of the people, and usually it's the rakyat, poorer rakyat will suffer for this.
That's true.
Betul, Doktor. Jadi kita semua boleh setujulah yang saiz rumah ni kadang-kadang boleh mempengaruhi juga emosi keluarga dalam rumah tu. Lagi dalam isolation.
I think it's more on economic condition juga, Doktor. Faktor.
It's all interlinked, it's all linkage, But I think the condition of your home affects a lot of your mental health as well.
Right.
Okay, Doktor. Despite the extreme domestic violence happening in one's home, like they are getting abused almost every day, especially in this pandemic. They get isolation, and at this point, not only their physical has been affected, the bruise, the bleeding, and all that, but also their mental actually has been affected, like Dr. mentioned just now. But many victims choose to stay in the relationship and claiming that they stay demi anak-anak, they stay for their sweet memory with their partner during awal perkahwinan or during bercinta and so on. But they did not realize that this action actually brings suffer to the children emotionally, and that they can get trauma from this experience. So my question, doctor, is the claim that they create, is that love or fear, doctor?
I think you're right. There are sentimental reason that the men have changed over the years with the children and all that. Tetapi not leaving the family when they can bear it is not really an excuse. Katakan dia 30 tahun, umur dia 35 tahun. Anak-anak baru standard 2, standard 3, katakan baru 9 tahun, 10 tahun ya. So let's say they have 3-4 children. Kalau they leave the marriage, where the children going to go? Because divorce is a very messy business. You have to go to court, you have to macam-macam. And then if you are working part-time work, it's not too bad. And then kalau you no work, if you leave, you have to find work. You have to think of your children's future. So masa dulu I pun talk to the client, they said this is one of the main problem. It is not an excuse. Actually, when the children are big, sometimes they will leave the partner. But when the children are usually below 15, 16, when they are between say 17 to 4 years old, the women tend to stay for the sake of the children. That is a fact lah. I mean, women, they feel responsible for the well-being of the children. Kalau tidak, what is the children? Where are they going to eat? Where are they going to stay? It's quite a problem here, you know.
That's true.
Anak-anak penting, anak-anak yang membesar kan.
Yeah.
That's right. So mungkin doktor yang apa yang doktor beritahu tadi, mungkin sebab the victims tak nak tinggalkan anak-anak dia sebab ialah sayang kan. Lepas tu tapi doktor, kalau dari perspektif the abuser, which is contohnya ayah dia, suka pukul-pukul mak dia, suka pukul even anak dia pun kadang terkena kan doktor. Jadi
selalu.
Yeah, that's right doktor. So saya nak tanya doktor, kenapa abuser ni suka pukul-pukul wife dia, tapi macam kalau tak suka boleh je pergi ataupun divorce and or have a proper discussion. But why dia keep nak pukul-pukul, nak melakukan keganasan ni doktor?
I think to the man, it's a form of control, yeah. They think that kalau dia beat dia wife, the wife will listen to him and not make any trouble. But I think this is a wrong misconception, because however well the wife treats him, he will be irritated by outside factor, and then when he comes back, bising sikit budak-budak, so he'll scold the wife for not taking care of the children and all that. And then macam you kata tadi, makanan sikit tak sedap lah ya. Then I always ask this question, kalau tak sedap, why don't you cook? Then we all eat. Then cannot lah kan, tak boleh. Kita saya suami macam mana saya nak masak pula kan. Tetapi when they comment on your food, they comment on this and that, it's a form of control actually. It's a form of control to say, okay, I'm in control. See, your food is no good. I have the right to say. See, you dress like this, now you're growing fat like a pig, all that. So actually it's a form of control. They don't respect the autonomy of the wife. They think that their wife and children are their property. So this is one of the main budaya problem that we have in the domestic sphere. Jadi inilah masalahnya ya. So kalau you kata mengapa suami tu tak mau divorce isteri, what for he wants to divorce his wife? Who's going to cook for him?
Betul.
Nak cook for him, who's going to take? It's nonsense. He talks all kind of things kan. So kalau dia divorce pun, then he has to pay for compensation, nak kena bayar untuk anak, nak kena bayar apa tu. For Muslim hanya 3 months lah, but for non-Muslim you have to pay quite a long time until the children become 16 or 18 like that, yeah. So there is a lot of problem for the man to divorce the woman. So as long as the marriage is tolerable for all, So he just kept on doing it lah. This is the problem.
Yes, that's right, doktor. Macam if it is love, why keep hurting, right, doktor? So dia agak.
I mean, if you love someone, you hurt the person.
Yeah.
But
It's quite bad.
Have you realized in a family, in any family for that matter, or our own family, we always take the one closest to us for granted, betul tak? For granted lah. Dengan orang luar, we are quite polite, you know. We say hello, how are you, thank you. Dengan keluarga sendiri, do you ever say thank you to your mother for cooking a nice food? No kan? Ada kan? Thank you. Right. That's a tendency for almost everybody lah kan, to take the closest one for granted. And we also feel that we can say anything hurtful to that person and they can take it, you know. But actually we have to be very conscious. Itu kata ada teaching, we have to be mindful. Bila kita duduk dalam satu keluarga, kita ada kawan yang rapat, we have to be very mindful what we say to them. We have to treat them with respect. But this is not so lah. When we are in a family, always take for granted everybody.
Yes, I agree.
Bukan terima kasih ke, mengucapkan maaf ke, memang susah kan dalam family sebenarnya. Saya mengaku jugalah.
Sebab macam kita kena reflect balik dengan kita punya behaviour dengan family kita, doktor.
Yes, right.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, doctor. We move to the next question. Kita selalu dengar awareness macam mana nak tolong victims yang mengalami domestic violence ni. Tetapi sangat susah untuk kita tengok ataupun the program, the awareness yang membantu abuser untuk berubah. Sebab kita tahu kemungkinan abuser ni ada peluang untuk berubah, tetapi disebabkan oleh kurangnya program, kurangnya awareness tu sendiri, dia tak dapat mendorong abuser tu untuk berubah dengan sebetulnya lah. So kenapa benda ini berlaku? Kenapa kurangnya program atau awareness yang membantu untuk membantu abuser ni untuk berubah? Kenapa?
I think tadi soalan tadi kan, kita dah katakan sebab budaya yang mengatakan yang dia head of the family. So kalau dia head of the family with certain privileges, buat apa dia nak ubah? Orang yang ada privilege usually dia won't ubah. Tetapi saya rasa masalah begini oleh sebab lelaki yang sudah dewasa, they won't come for this type of talks all. 80% won't come, that's for sure. Last time we went anywhere also, we went for talks, they won't come. How to reach out to the men? Tapi the men you reach out are usually very conscious men, they already understand, that's why they come. Yang lain tak mau. Okay, so I think the only way kan you can reach out to the men is to start them in school. Sekolah-sekolah ya. Sekolah-sekolah you have not another added subject, tapi you kena bagi subjek macam dalam kata civic ke dalam religious study, you have to say wanita kan, hak-hak wanita dalam rumah, and how you should treat your wife and children. Beating is not allowed, beating is against human rights. So I think in Western school macam dekat Sweden if I'm not mistaken ya, in New Zealand and all that, dekat sekolah lagi ya, dia dah terapkan semangat di mana mereka mempunyai fahaman yang peranan lelaki dan wanita itu adalah hak-hak lelaki dan wanita itu adalah hampir sama. Jadi kalau you pergi luar negeri macam Northern Europe or New Zealand itself, you tengok bila satu hari wanita tu masak, the next day the husband will cook. One day the woman will clean the house, the next day the husband will clean the house, and then follow alternate like that. Di Malaysia ini wanita will cook 6-7 days a week, right? Husband tak ada masak. So that reflects equality actually. That reflects some equality, but you cannot implement it at this generation until, of course, we add into the school, we add into our NGO work, and you can't reach out to the men there who have home already because they say, oh, you are now apa ni, infringing on my rights. You know, you don't think I don't know how to run my family. You don't think dia cakap gitulah. So what can you do? You have to start them quite young, you know.
Dari sekolah lah doktor, dari sekolah lagi kecil-kecil dah kena belajar dah macam mana nak hormat perempuan, dah macam mana nak hormat wanita, apa ibu terutama sekalinya, Doktor. So,
Ya, dalam universiti pun should have such understanding lah. Sebab dia orang keluar kerja, so dia tahu yang wanita tu bila balik kena juga take responsibility of the home, how he should share it, you know.
Early education is really important.
Yeah.
Doktor, saya ada soalan. I think up until now, I think some participants are a bit confused because maybe they think that we are focusing only on the Malay families. Sebenarnya domestic violence ni dia happen is of course, you know, borderless lah kan. Everywhere in the world it happens, in every race it happens. Jadi while I think the host may not want to touch on the breakdown of cases in terms of their race, is how do you link domestic violence? Just now you mentioned about home condition and economic condition and all that, and we even found cases where macam poorer countries like in South Africa, they have higher domestic violence cases compared to a developed country like Canada. Canada's very low in terms of cases. So how in terms of awareness in Canada, how is that different, and what kind of things that or efforts that they are doing differently from the rest, the other parts of the world that maybe could highlight, like in the case of Malaysia, di mana kita tidak menekankan awareness tu, which allow more cases to happen here and compared to the rest of the world.
Yeah. You see, in Malaysia, maybe you thought I was saying about the Malays, but according to figures over the years, you find that domestic violence cases are highest among the Indian, proportionate to their population everywhere. The Indians are the highest. Second, followed by the Malays. Third, followed by the Chinese. Okay? So why is this? Why is the Indian population has a higher domestic violence than the Malays or the Indians in terms of their percentage, in terms of their demography? I think besides I said education and all that, it's also due to the budaya, the budaya yang kita practice, as I said just now. I keep on emphasizing on the budaya. Not only the patriarchal budaya is among the Muslims, but the patriarchal budaya is also very strongly entrenched in the Indian culture. So, yeah, in the culture. And on top of that, I'm not saying all the Indians lah, please, they all come and attack me, they send me.
Don't worry, Doctor.
Also affected not only by the culture where the male is predominant, but they're also affected by the drinking.
Right.
The drinking led to a lot of violence.
Alcoholic,
Alcoholic, it is a contributing factor for the Indian family. And many of the Indian women are not working also. They are mainly housewives. But in the estate, they are also rubber tappers. But you know that being a rubber tapper as well as a housewife, you know, they have to get up very early in the morning. Say 5 o'clock, they have to get up. They have to prepare the food clean the house, prepare food for children. Then they go out to tap the rubber. From 7 to 10 or 11, bring back the rubber. Then come back again, you know, do housework and all that. Then the husband will go to the toddy shop nearby and will drink. So it cut across all race, but proportionately it's higher among the Indians. You can look at the table even now, I think. But with the pandemic, there might be some changes. I'm not very sure because I don't see it in terms of ethnic breakdown. But in peaceful time, the Indians have the highest domestic violence cases, reported in terms of their proportion of their percentage. But as you said just now, Canada and many of the European countries have reduced this in terms of equality of for women lah. You know how they are socialized, how the children are socialized, how the schools are taught, what sort of subjects are taught, and then also in the NGOs, and then maybe the television program can also bring up things like this. You know, you see, macam if you look at Germany, someone asked the German chancellor, that lady, he said, "How come you're wearing the same coat from the time you're nominated 12 years ago?" I think. until now. You know what her reply was? She said, I'm not a fashion model. I am the Prime Minister of this country. Tu dia. Tengok Malaysian female politician. Of course, they wear the hijab and all that. Please, whichever political party they're in. But you don't forget, they have makeup all, you know, it's not all. And then they have that butterfly lashes all. So you see, the women here still fits into the expectation of the man. If you look at the West, there's something, of course you have that budaya, culture, exploitation of women from the Hollywood and all that. But there are also different culture that emerges. Because the women's movement started in the 60s, women's liberation started in the 60s, which questioned all these patriarchal relations and all that. But in America, it started even early.
Right.
And badly beaten when they take up the slavery issue. And then in the West, in the 60s, the women's liberation movement started, and all kinds of books. A lot of women began to read. And then you have the civil movement in America. But in Malaysia, we don't have this movement. We have some struggle by the NGO women. So you find that the NGO now there are about quite a few you know. At least my time was about 7 or 8. Okay, we used to go to Sabah and give talks to the orang longhouse and all that. So you find that the woman punya idea, the equality for women punya idea in the country here have not reached the grassroots. Only the few educated urban women like Azwin and Rachel and all that. So you get these ideas because you have been overseas, you read. But the majority of the women in Malaysia are not affected by this. They think, ini kata tu macam ni, kena pakai macam ni lah besok. Orang kata kita tak baik dia perempuan. They are very, very concerned tak baik dia perempuan. Tetapi penghidupan you, sepatutnya you hidup secara you rasa betul. Bukan apa yang people expect. You don't live according to what people expect you to live. You live decently, morally tu pun, morally your own morals. So that's why Azmin, I think in Canada and all that, they have undergone a lot of transformation of ideas.
Right.
5 women liberation, books and all that. But in Malaysia and in Africa, okay, because of poverty and all that, they still stuck with a lot of conservative ideas because the women's struggle have not turned into a movement in Malaysia and there. So the women's idea of equality have not reached the grassroots, as you can see in Malaysia now.
Right.
It's got this. Now we have this theory about, okay, I'm not going to say it after it's recorded here. Yeah. So the idea of the women's emancipation, liberation, tak sampai ke grassroots in Malaysia. This is our main problem too.
Yeah. Kita perlukan more
education,
organization,
awareness.
Doktor, saya tertarik dengan Doktor cakap tadi women's liberation in Malaysia tak sampai lagi in Malaysia. Jadi kenapa macam tu Doktor, kenapa berlakunya benda tu? Kenapa kita tak terdedah pasal benda tu?
Why women's liberation does not take root? You see, macam West, they like to read. I think reading is very important. I know now you have social media and all those Instagram and all that, but it's very shallow. The knowledge is very shallow. Dulu 60s, 70s in the West they read a lot, you know. Jadi bila dia tembung satu situasi, katakan domestic violence, they will question now, why give you the man the right to beat you? You question it, you know. Kalau di Malaysia berlaku, kita pergi katakan dekat tepi estate, why the wife was beaten by her husband, and neighbor say, you tengok ini bini dia tak memasak betul jadi dia, so you see kan, the ideas are different. Because one society reads well, and then they listen to, okay, they have their own religion also, question religion, they even question religion as well, and then they have their own spirituality, they have their own independent thinking. Dekat Malaysia ni, you can't have independent thinking. Kalau you independent thinking, macam LGBT. Aku tu, ini berdosa ni, you jangan support LGBT ni, dia orang ni. Okay. But if you think, you read, the LGBT is, they are created that way. So, why should you condemn them? Macam dekat Malaysia, dulu kalau budak tu ADHD ke, Down syndrome, we laugh at them, kan? We laugh at them, pencil mereka, tersimpan mereka. Tapi West have already developed how to help them, why they created this way. So it's very different. And you find that you have to read. Kalau you tak baca buku yang telah ditulis oleh wanita-wanita yang macam Nawal El-Sadawi dekat Egypt. She was there in the 70s. My generation, all this my generation. So she was a doctor working in Egypt punya village. And she faced all this genital mutilation. I don't know whether you all know what is genital mutilation. And she's a doctor. She was against these practices. So she writes. She creates a library, she writes. And she was threatened by all the religious people there. Until finally she had to migrate to America for a while. Now she's passed on lah. Tetapi you find that in any conservative society, pembacaan kita ni kena keluar. Okay, we have to read many books. Ya, yang menceritakan the struggle that women have undergone. Baru kita boleh faham bagaimana idea boleh tukar, macam mana our ideas can change. Kalau you baca cerita novel-novel romance, you know, and then the prince will come one day and save you. I think that kind of thing may be enjoyable, but it's not educational lah to me lah, you know.
That's right, Doctor.
Membaca itu very penting. Reading is very important.
Doktor, macam kita orang sekarang pun memang jarang sangat kan kita tengok membaca kan.
Bila Puan Azrin suruh baca semua mata ke atas.
Besides reading, don't worry, besides reading, next time you would say you work at Langkawi or you work in Penang, you join like any of these NGO, because when you join people with different ideas, maybe you don't tolerate them at the beginning, but you can see that ideas are very diversified, and then you can understand better. I think not only theory is important, but also your participation, involvement.
Teams, you know. So Dr. Rohana, kalau kita cerita pasal domestic violence ni lah, is it always the women the victim atau kita ada juga the male as the victim?
Yeah, according to statistics over the years, over 1 decade now, more than 1 decade, you can say 90% are women lah, and children and girls, children also. 10% might be men lah, you know. Men ni selalu dia more not so much of physical violence but more on mental violence lah. They say the wife nak ni, nak itu, nak ini, compare me with other men. But the problem is that many men would not want to come and report because dia rasa malu tu dah. Police station, dia rasa malu tu dah. Kalau dia pergi police station, the man say, alah, you're the man of the house, you can't. Jadi dia malu tu dah. The sense of shame.
Dia rasa malu.
Of course, there are men who suffers in domestic violence as well. That one I won't deny.
Right. Right. So it's more emotional lah.
Statistically, it's very low. Okay.
Okay.
But statistics does not reflect truth. Yeah.
Right. Okay,
Hana.
Hana.
Okay, hi.
I want to ask my question.
Hi.
Okay. Hi, Hana. I have question like, as we discussed, doctor discussed just now, like most of the violence happen. The factor is mostly about the economic issue, family background, alcoholic issue. But how about someone who actually is educated and have like really stable income and so on? But the man really love to control his partner. It may not involve the physical part, but more like he control the partner, like she cannot see her family, like the kids cannot actually touch the textbook because of now the virus, you know, like the kids cannot do the homework, you cannot buy outside food and so on. So is this considered as domestic violence? And if yes, how the wife should handle this situation?
Oh, thank you Hana for the
Thank you for the question because domestic violence ni, as we say, it's not only physical but also emotional and psychological and all that kan. And if you look at the statistics again, the cases from the more upper family, middle class is less. It's not because it doesn't happen there. It happens there, but there are other mitigating factors like the home is more comfortable, yeah. But when it comes to people who are controlling, of course, sometimes you get this narcissistic person. Then if you're married into a narcissistic person, you're married to an egoistic person. So he thinks that everything should be his way. Or you get obsessive compulsive person. So kalau you arrange table tu, the table must be like that. The flower must be in one direction, according to his direction. The house must be ultra clean. So you get people like that. So I don't know whether this man is a normal man or suffer from some kind of mental, you can't say disorder lah, mental problem lah, mental problem. It could be narcissistic. He thinks only of himself. He could be very egoistic. He only thinks of himself and everybody should follow his way. But deal with this kind of situation, I think pretty hard for the wife to go and report him, isn't it? You go to the counselor and say, the marriage counselor will say, okay, datanglah, cuba kita bincang lah. But the man said, this is not my problem, I don't have a problem with this family. It's only you go for the counselling. This is what happened in many cases. It's not unless and until we have a mandatory kind of situation, then he can be forced to come. Like if he beats the wife, that's domestic violence. You can be forced to go for counselling. But if psychological, I think it's rather difficult process to help this family lah. That's how I feel like.
So like the wife can what actually the wife can do to cope with the situation.
There are many channels that she can call kan, macam the NGO, Women Crisis Center,
like WCC.
Then they can go to, if they're not physically beaten, it's very difficult to go to a one-stop center in the hospital, and then you can also talk to, say, psychologist center like you had yesterday kan, and then you can also call the welfare and talk how to get out of the situation. So sometimes the welfare will refer you to this kind of counselling center. I think this guy needs a lot of counselling. There is no, because as far as other aspects of domestic violence, he has not committed, he has not beaten her and all that, because many of the agencies, our agencies, deal mainly with physical violence. So when it comes to psychological, but this is a form of control, is also actually a form of violence because the person feels intimidated, you know what I mean? So you have to go call a counselling line, I think. Call a counselling line or any NGO near, because every state has an NGO. So you can always call them, the women NGO especially. They have counselling line. So you can go and meet them personally or you can ask for advice from them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hana.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Hana, for the question. So ada satu lagi question.
Hi. Okay, so I just want to ask one question. Okay, sometimes an abusive partner stops from one form of abuse, for example, physical violence, but continues to employs other forms of abuse, such as emotional, sexual, or financial abuse. So I just want to ask, is it possible for abuser to change their habit to abuse their abuse their kids or anything? Because sometimes we see that when the kids were small, so they keep continuous to abuse their children in such a form, such as emotional or physical. So and then they're going to stop at one point, but they're going to start again to abuse the kids in continuous sense. Yes. So is it possible for them to change their habits to abuse? Is it like kind of habits or how was it? I just want to know about that.
For a person to change, yeah.
Yeah, is it possible?
I think it's possible if the perpetrator feels he is not being fair to his family. But if he feels that the kids will listen to him, his wife will tolerate him, the need to change is not there. The need to change is not there, unless of course he reads or he mix with other people or he goes overseas and see the situation there. He could learn from that. But there's some people who go overseas who will, instead of opening up their mind, they become more enclosed. They will hold on to their budaya and structure. So for a person to change, for me, I find it's difficult because I find that the person, once the habit is formed from the time you are, say, after adolescent, it is rather difficult to change over the years. Unless something really challenges you. Let's say he is cruel, maybe financial or sexual or whatever. One of the kids die, okay? One of them died, let's say, at 30 what. And then he began to reflect, have I been kind? Have I been, fair? Maybe then he will change. But I don't know, I think unless there's something traumatic happening to him, if things are comfortable for him, usually they will not change. This is my pessimistic view of the perpetrator,
I see. Okay, thank
But
you.
I think the partner can do something about it, because when the children grows up, she has more leeway to say, okay, now I've taken all your control over these years. Now we arrange this new arrangement. If not, I can go and stay somewhere else. I can leave you, I can go. Because there's no obligation left. That's why in Japan, if you look in Japan, after 65, the divorce rate is very high.
Oh, really?
Yes, because the Japanese women say they have no more children. They've taken all this nonsense from the husband. The husband, after work, goes to the bar, because that's their culture, drinks there, maybe got disha girl or whatever, comes back late, because they are not supposed to leave the office early.
Right.
For the Japanese culture, you must work very, very long hours. So they go back late when the children are already asleep. They have no role in child rearing. So the wife tolerated this for many, many years. After 65, when the pension time, they say hello and goodbye. So off they went. In fact, if you ask a Japanese woman, do you want to be buried in the same graveyard as your husband, in the same locality? They say, no, please, as far as possible. You see the program, it's very interesting about Japan.
But even I saw a program on Japanese punya relationship culture. And they don't really show much PDA kan, macam they don't really show much affection between in public kan, dia tak ada those kind of things. And memang, in fact, some of the interviews we saw on some programs on TV, the wife actually say they don't call their relationship love tau. They're more of like getting a child, and then that's it. So that's why I think it leads to higher divorce rate. So memang they are not I don't know if I can use this term, but tak romantic lah kot kan. They are not like romantic people lah.
I don't know.
Based on that program I saw.
Must ask some women who have Japanese boyfriend lah. Then
I sort of have had one before.
Then you should know. You should know better.
Yeah, well, but the thing is, I think he's exposed to the Malaysian culture. Jadi dia di sini. So kalau I think original from there may be different kot,
They don't express themselves very much. They're very controlled people.
Right.
They're very civic conscious. But what I'm trying to say is that the Japanese woman, after 65, they really leave the home. Divorce. Suddenly, there's an explosion of divorce in Japan after 65. In Malaysia, I don't think the woman bothered to divorce at 65. Tak apalah, dia dah gitu, tak apalah, biar orang lah. Never mind lah. For him,
biar je lah.
Nak ambil ubat pun, nak wife bagi, nak timetable ubat pun, wife kena bagi. You tengok advertisement kita. Have you seen advertisement on the TB one? TB guy.
Yeah.
Cough. And then the wife come with the medicine, the doctor will come. In the West, they'll complain, you know. They say, why can't he take his own medicine? Why must your wife give it to you? See, so the subservient role is still there in our TV advertisement. You observe all the TV. I always observe, you know. But I can't critic lah kan, unless I teach media or what. Dia tak boleh ambil dia punya own medicine dia tak? Why dia kena?
Kan, betul. Okay, banyak ni soalan doktor. Ramai
ni. I have question. Okay.
Hai Hazika. Hai Hazika.
Assalamualaikum Dr. Rohana, Puan Azwin and organizing committee. So I have a question. Macam Dr. cakap tadi, like if we fight for the rights of women in domestic violence, orang akan fikir kita ni as like, oh perempuan tu like jahat or macam feminist in short lah. So how do we want to like macam, if we want to educate our kids or younger generation, it's better to implement in the education system. But how do we want to educate our own parents? Macam kan if there's a rape punya case, there's a movement on like believing the victims rather than the perpetrators. So how do we want to educate our parents, our older generation yang domestic violence is real? Macam Dr. cakap tadi, if there's a cases, diorang akan like buat it as a joke and like, oh tu mesti masak tak sedap or tu mesti kemas rumah tak reti. But how do we want to highlight macam this is a real issue, father, this is a real issue, mom. So macam how do we
I think more on stigma lah, society
yes,
ataupun
society
stigma, where you know sometimes we see ada a lot of violent cases atau domestic violence happening, tapi kita tak report, kita tak nak pun bring them to the, you know, because this is a normal thing lah, you know. Like
because there was a case macam rumah sebelah dia tu ada case of domestic violence and she had to call, and then that video went viral if I'm not mistaken, and ramai dapat backlash juga tak silap, because orang cakap because she was like macam not minding her own business.
Betul. Alright. Coming to rape case and educating the parents and all that. I think parents all you can discuss with them lah, but I don't think you can have much hope in educating them lah, because say the ideas. Now you concentrate on those inspired you and order the younger children. But of course, you be label lah, feminist lah. Feminist ni has a bad connotation in Malaysia, you know. They think that feminist ni tak ada fikir, semua ikut barat. They think kita ni ikut barat. Everything from the barat is bad. Tapi you ambil komputer, you belajar komputer, you belajar all technology is from barat, you know. Your car also from barat, you know. Jadi you must see which is good and bad from the barat, kan? Bukan kita nak ikut semua, kan? Okay. Kalau you nak educate kan people, and besides you giving talks in the NGO and all that, maybe you can have a discussion lah. Let's say you have group discussion, you have one article, you read. Not with your parents lah. Your parents, I think, is beyond help lah. You know, because you sit down there, case macam rape. Okay, rape. Okay, why do you blame the woman? You tell me. Oh, dia orang kata women ni lah. Even Nik Aziz last time says women pakai gincu ni itu sebab kena rape. Can you imagine? Many of the rape victims are children, you know, below the age of 16, 15, and they are also raped in school uniform. And there are many gang rapes now. So how can you blame the woman? Why can't you say the man? Why can't they control their whatever animal desire or what? What do you mean to respect your sisters? Do you know that the woman you rape has also a brother, has also a father, has also an uncle? How can you do this to another person? So I think in terms of blaming on women, it's always been there. Everything they blame the women. Pakai tak cukup lah, ini, keluar lah, ini, itu. But I think you have to change the perception. Here we have to change the perception. Why is it always the women have to conform to what the men think is their fault? Why?
I think just like how domestic violence ya, doktor, macam kan they beat us, and then we go and seek for help, and then we call the man, and the man say, well, I didn't beat her, she provoked me to beat her, so it's her fault. It's like,
It's always your
it's
fault.
like that.
It's always your fault. So women, I want to advise women here, don't always have this guilt conscience lah. Every time, oh saya punya salah, saya punya salah. Jangan fikir selalu gitu. You analyze the situation. Macam kalau jiran ni kita kena rape ya. So what do? Do you go and advise her to make a police report? Or maybe you can accompany her, that's the best you can do. To offer help to her, and then when she cry, what you talk to her, it's not your fault kan, sebab you percaya kan. Sebab pakcik-pakcik ni kadang neighbor ni, be careful also ya. Dia tengok budak tu, neighbor ni, anak orang ni dah dewasa sikit, dia pun trick the girl into coming to the house and then raping her. Many cases. Even Tok, Tok 70 years old, I remember Rachel is listening. We went to the prison. So there's this Datuk, 70 years old.
Oh my.
He went to the estate with his granddaughter and raped her there. And then there's a Datuk who lives a few doors away from the doctor, and then she will send her 9-year-old daughter to send the food to him. So she very manja with him lah, Datuk. And then one day he just locked the door and committed. So she didn't know what it is because she's young. So she went back, and bila dia kencing, baru dia rasa sakit. Okay? And then the mother said what happened. Then the story comes up. So when I interviewed this old guy in prison, I said, why do you do it? Is your granddaughter? Then Rachel at the other end said, hey, Dr. Rohana, relax. As a researcher, you must be cool and calm. I rasa nak tempeling tadi tu dah.
Yalah kan. Your stance that you have to be neutral kan. You have to be neutral. Tak boleh marah.
Tapi sakit hati tu
Don't take the blame. But I say to you, don't take the blame. Women, you must start lecturing to them, telling them, your friend, your neighbor, you don't take the blame.
Okay,
Because
doktor.
the blame has been on us all the time. Okay?
Kalau kita tengok kan sekarang ni, of course all this women's crime ni is all over lah. In fact, US pun, despite the fact that it's so developed, domestic violence is still everywhere over there. Memang banyak. And these cases, you can easily hear about them because they're very active in exposing or sharing, the whole construction of the whole story lah kan. Kita tengok dekat Hallmark lah, dekat even Netflix, they have like compilations of rapist, serial killer and all that. Betul tak? So we can learn lah from there. Kalau dekat Facebook tu kita ada Candle Ray lah, kita ada all those, I follow them always, so I listen to like how psychotic they become. So some of these people who commit crime ni, dia bukannya besok dia nak, hari ni dia fikir nak bunuh orang, besok dia dah bunuh. Tak, it's actually quite a long journey for them. So kita learn lah kan from them. Tapi in some countries, even macam dekat Malaysia ni, kita kurang lah buat benda tu. Not because it's not that we want to expose kan. Kita kata kita tak nak like expose sangat, nanti kadang-kadang we are giving people becoming infamous pula kan. But sebenarnya from this kind of sharing, we are actually learning something from it. So is there a reason why we are more hesitant in exposing this kind of stories in our society compared to some other places in the world where I guess is it something to do with freedom of speech atau apa? Macam dekat Malaysia ni banyak je kes-kes yang bunuh-bunuh. I baru baca recently, dah jadi about 10 years ago, involve this royal family lah, that royal family lah. Tak tahu pula at that time it happened, it was never on the news, so suddenly now they
there's a lot of control of course in the news. Macam I also watched that Mad Dispatch kan, dia punya cases in Malaysia quite horrible, quite horrendous. What they do to young children, and then in the Tafiz school, some of the children suffer really badly,
Right.
This is not lah. Sebab apa tau, kita punya media ni now it's more free lah. You can talk in the social media, you can talk in Facebook and all that. Tapi kita ni ada some bad pool tau. Kalau kita question that kind of thing, Tafiz, let's say I question Tafiz, and then a lot of people hentam me man, say, oh yeah, against Islam. Tafiz is Islam.
Yeah.
The person working in the Tafiz is Islam. So they skewed the issue to something else which is not relevant at all. So I think in the West, of course now also got not hentam-hentam lah, but in our country ni, in Asia, Islamic country, the religious, not religious, conservative forces are very strong. You notice lah, bila you cakap something aja, it will come out with all the religious things, say you're, but actually it's not an issue of religion here. It's an issue of right or wrong, you know. So, but and then you can't question royalty, seditious act. You be, you know, if the royalty has raped, we know in the past, some state, but you cannot say anything. You look what happened to one of our friend Ali. He questioned a royalty. I wouldn't mention lah kan. And then he was questioned, and then he was brought to that state, and they have their own force, and he was badly treated, you know, in their cell, badly treated. I'm not saying in the other police cell they're not badly treated. We have 1,000 over who have died in police custody. That was another issue. But he was so badly treated, you know lah, because we are in touch with him. And then lucky for him, he managed to escape. He's now a political asylum in Sweden. And then from there he attacked, like, he continued.
Yeah.
I think the fact is a fact.
Yeah.
But in Malaysia, we have too many control because their cyber trooper from the conservative side is very strong also. Dia tengok je kita cakap sikit, dia kata, ini perempuan ni memang ni tak guna dia. Lepas tu, kalau kita come out in media like this, tak pakai tudung nak cakap banyak. Dia say like that.
Betul.
So if you are afraid, you get hurt easily. You takut juga, rasa tak sedap ke tak orang hitam ni everyday tak sedap lah.
Okay, ada soalan lagi ni.
Ada. Sorry.
Soalan lagi.
I have another question. Doctor, I need a point of view of yours because certain victim, diorang kan macam viralkan diorang punya cases like, I've been abused, I've been raped. Tapi bila the comments bawah tu, woman supporting woman. However, men, they do still cakap macam, why you nak viralkan benda ni? It's aib. Kenapa nak kena aibkan? Itu kan rumah tangga you and everything. Do you think by doing the viral, macam by kita viralkan benda tu, would it change in the case punya macam mana cakap? Would it change orang punya perspektif satu? Would it fasten the police report or anything?
No, I think instead of viralizing your life, you know, your family life, what you cook and all that kind of stuff, it's better you go to the proper channel. You go to NGO, you go to Women Crisis Center dulu, you go to the women's, you go to the police, you go to the welfare. I think it's better that way. Because in a way, you just bring shame to your family, to your children. Some of your children don't like it as well, you know. You know what I mean? Of course, you get sympathy from your Facebook friend, but they can't do anything. They can't do anything, you see. So I would suggest, from my point of view, you go to the telephone counselling. You go there, they will call you and ask you what is the problem. Then you solve your problem. Viralizing is just a publicity lah, which I think is not effective from my point of view lah, to solve your problem. Of course, more people will know, but it is not effective in solving your problem. That's how I feel about it.
Betul.
Alright, thank you, Doctor.
Welcome.
Okay, soalan lagi. Ramai tu tadi kan yang tanya.
Mara ke depan.
Siapa saya?
Saya Emma. Hai. Hai, Assalamualaikum Doktor. Hai, Madam Azrin dan organizer. Okay. So saya ada tengok satu video ni, one of the video yang dia kena abuse dengan seorang lelaki ni, tapi dia bagi signal dekat kawan dia yang macam ni, nak menunjukkan yang dia kena abuse. So Doktor, is there any other signal yang nak menunjukkan yang dia kena abuse? Sebab ada setengah orang jenis dia bukannya tak nak report, tapi dia takut nak report pada orang sebab dia takut dia kena ugut, maybe sebab dia, kalau kau report anak-anak kau kena macam tu. So ada tak signal ataupun woman safety code yang kita je tahu, macam kita sebagai woman yang tahu benda tu adalah dia dalam bahaya macam tu.
Oh, I'm not aware of it lah. I'm really out of touch when it comes to all these signal things. I think kalau I tahu signal, maybe you need to ask the woman organisation nearby. Kan macam ada hotline kan? You ask them what is the signal for such and such and such, and then maybe in KL you might have a different signal, or even the talian kasih tu might have a different signal. So I think there are some common standard signals. There are a variety of signals, but I'm not familiar with it.
I think eventually, even if we create a signal, eventually the other gender will find out. so no matter how we viral it will come to a time like, oh yeah, you're using that signal now. I know how that works, you know. So.
But if you ask the woman, macam you ask the woman AIDS organization, they may have a special signal that only you will know. Don't tell your husband lah, don't tell whoever beating you, you know.
Kan. So maybe kita pakai bendera pink ke instead of bendera putih kan sekarang. So kalau you ada domestic violence, you keluarkan bendera pink dekat rumah you kan.
Bendera purple madam.
Tapi
so many bendera, very confusing right?
Saya rasa doktor, apa kita pun sebenarnya perlu tahu macam mana kalau macam kita tengok orang ni kena abuse ataupun tidak, macam tengok dekat dia punya macam lebam-lebam. So dari situ kita boleh tolong kan doktor?
Yeah, yes. You can read the signs. Let me tell you, you have to be quite observant lah. Observant. Macam you kerja dekat college, you kerja dekat office, you kerja dekat let's say you go to the canteen ya. You tengok ya, sometimes you can see ada dia punya katakan ada black patch ke, ada sign marks ni, memang kan. You know that is there kan, then you kalau you kenal dia, cerita lah kan, apa today nampak macam tak apa
betul doktor.
You okay ke kan, you okay ke, kalau apa-apa nak cakap you boleh cerita dengan I lah kan, kita boleh share lah, tengok.
Diorang mesti akan
sometimes they won't tell. Sometimes you have to read the signs. The signs are kalau this quite, I know you can read the signs because I have a friend who is a lecturer but trained in forensic. So he knows, you know, once we went to the red house where we do photostating, then I come out, he said, you know, her neck is all got bruises. I think she is subjected to domestic violence. He said, see, kita tak observe je lah. Tapi from then on, I start observing a little bit lah, you know. Dia punya mood tu, dia punya cara, you can tell a person is depressed, not happy, you know.
Saya perasan dekat dalam chat box ni ada komen Mokhtar Rudin ni, komen apa tu sebenarnya? Apakah komen itu? Itu soalan ke pantun ke macam mana?
Bukan tadi doktor kan there was iklan kan, apa wife ambil ubat untuk husband apa semua kan.
Yes. What do you feel about it?
Itu I takut tu dia takut salah ambil ubat.
Mungkin suami dia tak pandai baca kot doktor.
Boleh jadilah. Tetapi you must always remember the message that it carries. About women serving men. I haven't seen a message in which the man serve the woman. Ada tak? Ada ke? Banyak ke? Advertisement? Yang mana tu?
Mungkin ada lah.
Advertisement I didn't come across lah doktor.
You haven't come across.
Belum lagi lah, tak apa, nanti kita buat.
I would really like to see.
Nanti kita buat ya.
Yeah, you can do a gender neutral advertisement actually. Macam in the West, how you be kind to animals, all that. Dia tak ada macam, you tahu advertisement kita ni very basic lah. Macam orang smoking kan, dia kata saya ambil rokok saya buang. You think the man will allow you to take a cigarette and buang? He will walap you man. Ataupun saya do something else lah, make it help punya cigarette ke, you know.
Be more creative lah doktor.
Be more creative and imaginative. I saw one advertisement in New Zealand. dia dengan babi, you know, small little pig. Kalau sini kan pig, babi, small little piglet. So dia tengok babi tu dekat jalan. Dia ambil babi tu, dia simpan lah, dia bela lah, dia bela macam pet dia. Lepas tu dia tanya lah around, siapa hilang babi? Any of the farm? So he went to the farm. The girl said, yeah, one of my piglet is lost. Dia pergi situ. Then they asked the farmer. The farmer said, okay, I just release it there. Tapi dia tengok situ, apa tu, you can buy, you know, bacon. We prepare bacon here as well. So he took back the baby, the small piglet by the name of Su, you call him, and brought him to live with him. There, the message is, be kind to animals. You notice or not? Fire very clearly, but there the message is very clear. I baca tu, I tengok, oh, that's how people, suddenly you develop kindness in the children. You don't treat animals like, just like that, you know what I mean? So I think imagination in advertisement is very important lah. The message.
I think we have a very interesting question juga ni, Doktor, daripada Nur Iqbal ni. Iqbal, do you want to ask the question yourself ataupun ada yang lain?
Boleh, Madam. Boleh. Assalamualaikum, Doktor. My name is Iqbal. I nak tanya lah. Sometimes saya baca on internet lah kan, the abuse become the abuser. Macam kadang-kadang kita tengok dalam serial killer punya dokumentari pun, most of them come from abusive family. So I nak tanya lah your take on this statement. Betul ke the abuse prone to become an abuser?
Yeah, that's why I think I answered a bit earlier that it can happen because as you are well aware that many of the serial killers have a very traumatic childhood. They really suffered a lot, you know, in many ways. And sometimes I can't say everybody lah. Those who come from a domestic abusive family could turn out two ways. One, they adopt the behavior of the abuser. One, they reject it completely with their own children. So I haven't got the statistics, but I think your trauma in childhood has a lot of effect on you. Either you turn out to be as abusive as the abuser, or you become very frightened of a lot of things as well. You know, so I don't know. I don't have the statistics, so maybe can ask a counselor. Probably they may have. But you're right. The serial killers all have a very bad childhood. I know.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay.
Thank you,
Iqbal. Next question.
Dekat chat ni ada soalan tadi daripada Fakrul.
Okay, boleh tanya.
Fakrul ada ke? Kalau boleh turn on the mic and turn on the camera.
Yes. Kalau tak ada tak apa, kita boleh bacakan.
Okay.
What's the question?
Dia tanya, saya ada soalan. Adakah sebab pengaruh daripada kahwin campur dalam kalangan masyarakat kita ni boleh juga berlaku domestic violence? Sebab kita tahu culture orang Malaysia atau orang Asia kan sopan santun. So adakah boleh jadi juga disebabkan bawaan pengaruh culture dari luar?
Mixed marriage, you mean mixed marriage? Ataupun kahwin dengan orang asing, dengan orang putih gitu?
Kahwin dengan foreigner.
Kahwin dengan foreigner ni sebenarnya.
So this one is a very general question because kita domestic violence ni banyak daripada local people lah, our own people ya. Jadi dengan mixed marriage ni kemungkinan ada perbezaan budaya, tetapi tak banyak case reported lah. As far as I know, according to the cases that come to the center, kan, the women center, come to the police, come to the one-stop center and all that, there are not many cases involving intermarriage. That is from my understanding lah, from what I gather lah. Maybe there are statistics elsewhere. And you must also remember, those who marry foreigners are usually the more middle class, the more educated class. It could be hidden violence, I don't know, you know, but going to the police station and going to the women center is more of the working class and same marriage. Alamak, split personality.
Soalan seterusnya.
Why you to ask a psychiatrist?
Kita ada soalan seterusnya. Nur Amali nak tanya soalan. Nur Amali ada kat sini tak?
Nur Amali, okay.
Nur Amali.
Nur Amali.
Dengar ke?
Dengar.
Dengar.
Hai.
Hai.
Hai Amalin.
Got nice background there.
Cantik background dia.
Sorry, I'm Amani from UiTM Kota Kinabalu. Actually, I have a question. We tend to think that yang kena cari solution tu is orang yang kena abuse, or which is maybe most of that women lah. And kita kena macam tukar perception, kita kena ubah situation. Most of the solutions mesti macam perempuan yang kena buat, from what I can get or from what I have heard before. Jadi my question is, kalau lah kita boleh try ataupun cuba something yang boleh kita buat untuk ubah lelaki pula. So far, we tend to know that we need to change the perceptions of the family, we need to change the perceptions of our friends or the society. I think maybe if we can find a way to change the perceptions of a man who such as our special one ke, our husband ke, maybe we can find a way to macam reduce this domestic violence, because I think this is happen in a marriage life kan. Contohlah kalau macam a wife tu dia tak tahu pun what is actually this is domestic violence, and dia tak tahu pun sebenarnya ada cara yang dia boleh try untuk dia kurangkan suami dia ataupun dia halang suami dia daripada jadi macam. So I want to know if you have maybe if you have possible solutions to try an action actually to avoid from a husband to abuse his wife.
His wife, huh? How to educate him? How to change his perception? Yeah.
I think maybe more to like an action. Kalau macam to change perceptions kan, we can only talk or we can only macam bagi tahu ataupun something. Maybe like we can do something for him, or we can maybe an action lah, macam contoh kita kena lagi sayang ke. But I don't think that kalau macam kita tunjuk kita punya romantic ni, orang akan macam reduce dia punya violence. So I think maybe we have another solution ke.
Yeah, lebih sayang and all that. I think the solution, the problem is not with you. The problem is with the perpetrator. So the question now, how do we educate the perpetrator? Jadi kita dapati banyak macam Ministry of Women, dia ada program kan. They should now, sebab di sekolah hopefully it will be introduced, which I don't think it is looking at the syllabus in the school. But NGO and the ministry, they should come out with more pamphlet, more pamphlet to make people more aware, that this issue is not an issue of women alone. It's not that women are to blame, and there are circumstances around the house and also the budaya, as I said just now. And also I think the role of advertisement, I always read advertisement very carefully, the inner message. Advertisements should also show that that there's some kind of harmony in the house. Kalau kita ada gaduh, macam mana kita solve kan? Very short advertisement can also help to educate the masses lah, saya rasa. Dan juga saya rasa lain macam tu ceramah-ceramah di luar-luar ke can be to include this kind of issue, because to educate the perpetrator is one tough job, I tell you, because many of the centers that are set up, centers and hospitals that are set up is mainly for the victims, because the abuser will not learn until he is arrested by the police under the Domestic Violence Act. Once he is arrested by the police, he has to go for some counselling. I remember that is a case last time in Penang, that he is an assistant manager in hotel. He used to beat his wife, and the wife is in hospital. And then when we asked him, how do you beat your wife? He Bukan banyak sangat. Dia kata kita bentuk kepala on the door ni, you know, you just knock the head against the door. You know, to him that's nothing, you know. But you let me hit your head against the door and you see how you feel. So, in the hospital, he was called to the hospital when he came to see his wife in the hospital. Of course, the report, I don't know if the report has been launched or not, but usually the doctor will launch a report on your behalf. So the doctor called him aside. The doctor is a conscious doctor. So he said, you know, you do this to your wife. You know, why? Why do you find another social? One thing about, this is not a Malay, this is an Indian guy lah. One thing you notice about Malaysians generally, if they get someone higher than them, in terms of work, in terms of position, they tend to listen quite a bit. Yeah. Let's say in the religious department, the mufti or say something, the other Muslims will always respect and listen to his opinion. Yeah, macam kita work in a hotel, and when the manager has a very broad mind, we always tend to listen to him. So it's always good that when you're in a certain position of influence, you try and generate this kind of messages to them. That's the most you can do. Kan macam like say you're going to work next time, kan? You're going to be a teacher or whatever, lecturer. So you preach, kan you preach lah, you tell, you know, during the safe forum and all that. That's the only thing you can do. Because as far as the perpetrator is concerned, they won't want to educate themselves unless they're forced to. This is from my experience also.
Good answer, Doctor. Thank you.
Thank you, Amali. Alright, thank you so much, Doctor, for your explanation. So, is that the end of our slot? So, to conclude our today talks discussion, kita dapat tahu banyak mengenai domestic violence and dari segi cara untuk mengatasi and terdapat pelbagai solution, and macam Doktor beritahu tadi, kita dapat tahu dari luar negara pun ada cara-cara macam mana nak selesaikan masalah domestic violence. Contohnya kita kena terapkan pada education, means that early education, right?
Betul. Kita pun sebagai
before I leave, I just want to say that it's nice knowing you all. Dan bila you're in Penang or KL, you can always contact me. You have any problem to help or give talks or talk to the victim. I don't talk to the perpetrator, he might beat me up, So children, all that is fine. We can always be our role as human being, I think, is to be friends to other people, and also to be friends as far as possible, kind to animals, and then we be friends to children mainly because they are helpless, they are powerless. So we always try to be more associated with the powerless so that we can help them to build themselves up, including the victims and all that. So so do not be afraid to do good deeds in this society, I feel.
So, okay, we can wrap it up.
Thank you so much, moderators and Dr. Rohana, for such a wonderful session, and thank you so much for those who asked this question. I think we have gained a lot of knowledge about this topic, and it is such an eye opener kan. Dari sesi tadi kita boleh simpulkan bahawa domestic violence ni boleh datang daripada pelbagai faktor. Daripada saiz rumah pun benda tu boleh jadi punca, betul tak? And then kita pun Malaysia boleh belajar daripada negara luar macam mana untuk handle domestic violence ni sendiri. Betul tak, Alia?
Betul, that is right, Ha. I agree. This is a very wonderful session and a great opportunity for us to learn about this topic. But yelah kan, jarang-jarang kita dapat join talk yang membincangkan isu macam ni kan. Apa yang saya dapat daripada talk hari ni, we can never change people's behaviour, especially abuser ni, by loving them harder unless they themselves wanted to be changed.
Yes, right.
Alright, before we end our event, we would be pleased to invite Dr. Rohana again to say a few words and opinions about this event.
It's a very relevant topic because due to the pandemic, there are increases in all the negative things like, unemployment, crime, cyber crime, domestic violence, hanging of themselves. So this mental state is has increased due to the restriction of the pandemic, and no one is to be blamed for this except that the pandemic has come and descended upon all of us in the world. ada yang kata vaksin dia akan bunuh kita lah, 2 years time all of us will die lah, macam-macam kan. So all kinds of negative news. So you try and do what you think is best, and you can be friends to people who are experiencing pain in any form, like domestic violence, in suicidal case. You can also join organization that will help. Let's say next time you work, you can do in your part-time, you can join NGO that helps other people. Then you can also produce material that can make people understand the situation. You can also create advertisement that can that can create consciousness. You can also talk to schools next time about their role, you know. You can talk to children punya organization, children's group. You can do quite a lot of things. One person can do quite a lot of things if you are rajin lah, you know.
Betul. Betul. Kita
Dr. Rohana.
Kita kena change.
Okay, finally, we would like to invite our gorgeous advisor, Madam Azina San, to say a few words.
I think I said a lot already in between of the session. But anyway, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our panel speaker, Dr. Rohana Ariffin, all the way from Penang. I've never actually met Dr. Rohana, but I feel like we bonded already. So hopefully one day I get a chance to meet up with you. And thank you to Dr. Rachel for introducing me to you. Thank you to everybody, and thank you, Dr. Rohana. We wish you all the best. Semoga stay safe, stay home, and stay safe. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much.